Okay. Warm greetings, everyone, and namaste from India. I'm Abhesh Kumar Gangwar, coordinator and focal point, Regional Center of Expertise, Srinagar in India. Regional centers of expertise are acknowledged by the United Nations University in Tokyo, Japan. But you see on the right hand, handprint. We all are aware of the ecological footprint, and footprint is the pressure we exert on planet Earth. Handprint is opposite to footprint. It is our positive action that helps planet regenerate and become sustainable. So we have been doing a lot of handprint activities, and by reducing our footprint, increasing our handprint, we will really become sustainable. And the today's case study I'm going to present with you is how do we educate our communities in becoming sustainable, climate smart, and disaster resilient. This is India, and we work in the northernmost part of it. And this entire northernmost part is very high altitude, very rugged terrain. And this is international borders with Pakistan, with China, with Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. So the entire area is very fragile, is highly conflict ridden. There is armed conflict. India and Pakistan are not in good relations, and often there are ceasefire violations. Also with China, we have problems over the border issues. Same thing with a lot of infiltration from Bangladesh, from Bhutan to India. So this entire area is neglected by the government. There is huge presence of armed forces, and the foreign soil is used to do wrong things in India. The militants use that. Even the government is not being able to address this area properly because this is very remote. The government officers do not want to serve in this area. The education, the infrastructure, the health facilities are not that good as compared to the mainland. So that is the challenge. How do we serve the people of this area and this area? The presentation, this case study I'm going to share with you. Why did we choose these communities and this area? And why did we start? The reasons for our starting the ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, and ecological transition education. How was the situation in the area before we started? How it improved over the time, and where has it reached today? So we will make a comparative statement of that. And how do we connect with the community? And what are our future plans? And this entire case study I'm going to share with you. This barbed wire you see here, this is the line of control. And it's very difficult. Often there is selling from Pakistan to India, India to Pakistan, and many houses are destroyed. Many people and animal get killed in that selling. So this whole area is always problematic. Safety of the people is very difficult here. And not many people want to live in this area, but those who live there have to live there. This is all entire hill area, very rugged terrain. Infrastructure is poor. Houses are very scattered. Electricity, internet connection, they're very poor in this area. And this area has three kinds of communities. Community one, they keep moving. Throughout the year, they are on the move. What we call them nomads or the pastoralists. So their entire livelihood is by rearing the animals. Some rear goats, some rear sheep, some rear the cattle. And during the summer, the snow at high altitudes melt, and that is April to September. At that time, these pasture lands, upland, they become accessible to them. So during summer, they are at high altitudes, and during winter, October to March, the snowfall starts and these areas become very difficult. So they come down. So high altitude and low altitude, that's their movement. They keep moving in search of pastures. they spend their entire life in search of pasture lands and they keep moving. The second community is they do move, but not much. They have two places to stay, at the low altitude and at the high altitude. They have houses and lands at both the places. So they keep animals. So they move partly, not fully. And the third community is sedentary. They stay at one place and they do more agriculture than the animal husbandry. This is the nomad community, which moves throughout the year. But they say our lives revolve around our herds of animals. So that is the livelihood. And we camp wherever our animals are safe. There is water and safety to animals. So they camp there. This is pristine environment. These herders and the nature and their animals. That's all they have it there. Because they are moving, their children remain deprived of education. They can't leave children behind. So both these communities who are on the move, partly and fully, their children suffer from not having education. And the community that is sedentary, they live at one place, even they do not have good education because this is a border area, infrastructure and facilities, the teachers are local, they are not well trained, the syllabus, curriculum, and plethora of problems. So education for all the three communities, moving, partly moving, and sedentary, is a big challenge. Besides education, the livelihood, which is the crux of the community, and the safety, the area must be safe. So these three issues we have been addressing: how to improve education, quality of education, how to improve livelihood, and how to improve safety of the people in the area. These are the children there, pristine environment, high altitude, they and their, nature, nomads and animals. They are happy. If you fall ill, there is no hospital there. So you have to really attune yourself, attune your living with the nature. You have to learn living in harmony with nature. Animals and the community, they are very integral part. Animals are part of their life. This area is very prone to climate change. This is all glaciers. Rivers flow from this area, they originate from this area. And the senior people who today are 70 plus years, they say the river flow in, the water flow in the rivers has reduced to 1/3. What they saw in their childhood and what is there today, if we compare the river flow, it has reduced drastically, roughly 1/3. So this whole area is very susceptible to climate change, global warming, environmental deterioration. Besides that, the entire area falls in seismic zone 5. It's very susceptible to high intensity earthquakes and many other natural disasters, the extreme weather events, climate change triggered disasters, induced disasters. And all these disasters, natural, man-made, lead to a lot of destruction, both infrastructure as well as death of the people and the animals. So these are some slides here. The schools, the office buildings, and the houses get collapsed in the earthquake. And after the disasters, people become, the homeless. They have to stay outside in the tents, the relief material provided by them, the humanitarian agencies. So it's very tough life. So ensuring safety to these people post-disaster is a huge challenge. So disaster risk reduction, disaster preparedness is key there. And that's what the one part of our program. So we educate children, we inculcate disaster appropriate behavior. We tell them do's and don'ts. When the children are, they know how to behave in a disaster situation. Through the children school system, we reach out to the community. The message reaches to the community, a very multiplier effect. We do not have disaster museums like Japan and Korea have, but then we do have a multimedia mobile exhibition. This whole area is very difficult, rugged terrain. Even a bus cannot move in this area because the roads are winding. So a four-wheel drive, which is a Jeep basically, fitted with multimedia mobile exhibition, and that we take around to villages and in the schools, and we educate the community, both schools and the village community. A lot of mock drills we do, so people are really well prepared in terms of any disaster, how to react to the do's and don'ts. Besides schools, we help the village community to make the village disaster management plan. We sit with the community, help them in making their village disaster management plan. What are the vulnerabilities in the village? What are the strengths? What are the safe areas? What are the dangerous areas? So sitting with the villages, helping each village prepare their village disaster management plan. This is the exercise. Whole village gets together and we help them draw the what we call village mapping. So using the colors on the ground. And after that exercise, we convert it on a piece of paper, and that becomes the village disaster management plan prepared by the community itself. And we often, I mean, after every year or two, we revise it because the capacity and vulnerabilities keep changing. Each school makes its school disaster management plan. So each village has its own disaster management plan, and each school has its own disaster management plan. So the children are safe in the school, and when the school is not there, they are at the home in the village. So they are safe at the community. So safety of all, everywhere, all the time. That's our objective. And the children and teachers, they prepare their village and school disaster management plans. After the safety is the education. Infrastructure of education in this entire area is very poor. So we need to really build a good infrastructure. The quality of education, because teachers are not well trained, is not good. And the whole teaching learning has to be joyful, both for the students and teachers. And it has to be locally appropriate and relevant. Often the textbooks, the syllabus curriculum is written by the national bodies who sit in the capital city. So the syllabus and curriculum, the textbooks do not carry local examples. What are the local rivers, traditions, mountains, folk, culture, art, etc. It does talk about the national, the mainstream, but not about the local. So child is not able to connect himself, herself with the local environment. And that's a huge lacuna in the local education. We teach the teachers who are local. You develop your own material, which is derived from the local environment. Examples are local, and that becomes really appropriate syllabus curriculum. The teacher training, teachers are the key change agents. So we train the teachers in imparting education in a meaningful way, making it locally relevant, making it interesting, joyful. During the disasters, children face the trauma, they undergo a lot of stress, even the elderly people. So through education, we help give psychosocial care and support, both to community and to the children. These are the schools we have made in the area. We cannot build all the schools. Making schools is the responsibility of the government. But having done 10 schools in the area, we have put the standard operating procedures, the transparency, the good practices. Now the community says, unless you do our school the way RC Srinagar has done it, we are not going to accept. Community tells to the Department of Education who construct schools, please do our school as RC Srinagar has done it, following those standard operating procedures, those standards. So that's the footprint we have left in the area. People cite the example of it. So we cannot build all the schools, but then we have piloted it and people have taken it as a case study, a success story, and they cite it to the Department of Education. As I said, this whole area is a border area, very difficult to access, to approach, huge presence of army. Here you see the arrow, there's a school we have made. The entire hillock at the back side are Pakistan, and this side, this is the last Indian village. So you need to have army permission to visit this area. So working in this area was very fascinating, all around army and local community. and you have, I mean, very poor access to internet and to the local markets. While doing this infrastructure, you need to have skills. This has to be disaster resilient, earthquake resistant construction. For that, we need to train the local technicians, the people who do the construction. So they are the masons, they are the carpenters, they are the blacksmiths. So we organized training workshops for the local technicians, how to follow the good building code, how to make disaster resilient buildings. So these trainings are very much helpful to the local community. After our interventions, the entire infrastructure that has been built is reasonably disaster resilient, earthquake resistant. We cannot reach out to all the schools. We have limited resources and the manpower, but we do reach out to some schools to pilot, to showcase that education should be imparted to students this way, in a joyful, in an interesting way. Umang, what you see here, Umang is full of joy, full of energy, vibrant, which children like. So we do these programs. When we come back, we get flooded with phone calls from the students and teachers. When are you visiting our school next? We liked your program very much. It was very interesting, very joyful. Please do visit us again. But we cannot reach out to all the schools. So the strategy is teacher training. We have teacher training workshops for all the schools. And these teachers in turn train the other teachers of their school. And that way we reach out to all the schools of the area, all the children, all the community by training the teachers. These are the teacher trainings. And we also incorporate in the teacher training the pertinent, the burning climate change, sustainability, disaster risk reduction, the global target, whether they are SDGs, Aichi biodiversity targets, or Paris Climate Agreement. So our all trainings, we keep teachers abreast of the recent development globally. We build their capacity and then they cater to their community and the students. After education, the main crux that community wants is their livelihood, secure livelihood. They must have good income, a good life support system. And for that, we need to sit with the community. What are the trades and income generating activities depending upon beneficiaries' skills, interest, and willingness? Not everyone can do everything. So each one has a choice, have skills. So we sit with the community. Some people wanted to have cows, some wanted to have sheep, some wanted to have poultry. Youth, educated, unemployed, wanted to run computer centers. They wanted to learn IT skills and join jobs. There are people who are good in catering. They cook food during the weddings and other occasions. People are in building, tailoring, carpentry. People are with the small shops of medicine shops, cosmetic shops. So depending upon the choice of the people, we provide them the livelihoods. We impart the trainings and we give the what we call seed support, and then they can scale it up. So we become part of the community, what we call participatory rural appraisal, PRA, and PLA, participatory learning action. So we work with the community, we become a part of the community, we win their confidence, they have confidence in our program, and we identify the needs. And that is the crux, identifying needs successfully. What is the felt need of the community? If you are able to identify it properly, your program is going to be successful. If you fail somehow not to be able to identify the felt need of the community, your program may not be successful. So this is how, I mean, you have to be part of the community, you have to live with them for some time, and you have to look their problems from the angle they see it, as they see it, not as we see it. Okay, so identifying the problems of the community through their lens. So these are the cows people wanted, and we gave them the cows. These are in the advanced stage of pregnancy. They will deliver baby in next 10 days. So immediately after the earthquake, they get livelihood support. ready to get milk. These are the sheep. The people in the red, these are the government people. And before giving the animals, we tie up with the government. After we give the animal, we cannot be there. So government takes care of them. They do the insurance. They are tagging each animal. They keep the record that animal is with which owner. The insurance, the veterinary care, and the post, whatever is required, the government takes care. So it is always good to tie up with the government. You do pilot, and then government takes it over. So we need to mainstream our programs. And that is right from the beginning, developing the program with the government and then handing it over to them. These are on the bottom left hand, the caterers, people who do cooking during the occasions. So we gave them the utensils they require. At the bottom, there are the girls doing tailoring, and on the top right hand, this is embroidery. And the youth wanted the computer centers. So we teach them the skills, how to run the computer, do the IT, so they can join the jobs. Ladies at home, they need not go to fields. They can do mushroom cultivation. You don't require much land. You don't require much resources. So having the trays and tier systems, you can really cultivate mushroom, very nutritive, it has ready market, and women can work, get gainful employment, and add to the income of the families. Very successful program. And this was not there. We have introduced this technology. Same thing, this whole area during the winters, at least 4 months, the temperature is sub-zero, -5 degrees at least. Nothing grows outside. So these polygreenhouses help people cultivate the vegetables they require and all their household requirements, the 4 months of the year. Beekeeping, the apiculture is also very good, very important, very profitable. Bees pollinate the crops, horticulture, agriculture. So beekeeping increases the crop yield, and also it gives you honey, which is very good for your health, and you earn money by selling it. So beekeeping is another technology we introduced. People liked it. They have been making very handsome income of that. Poultry, these people are meat eating, and most of the poultry is imported from outside. So we gave them the poultry units and became very successful. People have been earning money, and your poultry requirement is met now locally. We do a lot of awareness programs on different occasions, like the water, sanitation, health, hygiene, environment, biodiversity, wetlands. So depending upon the occasions, we do a lot of awareness programs for the students, for the teachers, for community, different stakeholders. The NGOs and CBOs in the community are very important. The corporate sector is very important. So we do consultations with them. We organize, this is the youth group, these are the women's group, this is the NGO sector. We take them into our fold. We discuss programs with them. We take their feedback. So you need to work with all the cross sections of the society, with the industries, with the youth groups, with the women's groups, NGOs, and CBOs. This is a conference, and there are politicians, there are bureaucrats, all these stakeholders are there. So at different intervals of our interventions, in the beginning, the midterm, and towards the end, we keep organizing such programs. We present what we have been doing, our results we present, and we get the feedback from the people. There is media involved in it. So that's a very good transfer, communicating what we have been doing, and then getting the feedback from stakeholders, but we should improve upon. A fantastic exercise, it helps us. Monitoring evaluation is very important. We do internal audit. We monitor and evaluate programs ourselves. We also hire external monitors. On the right hand, both these are the external people. We hire them. But then the very fascinating way of getting your program evaluated, monitored, is using the children. We people can be biased, but children are never biased. They are honest and absolutely pure. So we run a workshop we call Pictures for Life. We train these students for over a week, how to do the monitoring, how to take data, how to take pictures. And these children go to the villages, to the community, to the beneficiaries. And absolutely unbiased results. And we leave behind a lot of capacity in the village by training these students, young children, which are the future generations. So achievements till date, but we have the quality of education in the area with our interventions has improved very significantly. The teachers are able to make their own reading material, so which is very locally relevant. It has the examples. The child is able to connect with the local environment. Teachers use the teaching aids. So education has become really joyful, interesting, meaningful, locally relevant. A lot of, as I said, the schools, the way we made, a lot of good practices and standard operating procedures we have left in the area. Livelihood, lot of capacity building. We have trained people, we have improved their income and the employment generation. Women's roped in, like the mushroom culture. New livelihood options, the mushroom, poly greenhouse, and beekeeping. These are the new technologies we have introduced in the area. Improvement in the quality of life of people. People, after our interventions, they enjoy a better quality of life. And also the quality of environment, the biodiversity, the pollution levels, the forest, the environment, the air has improved in the area. Our future plans are, we have done bit, but the area is huge, challenges are huge. We have to scale it up. And we have to help our people, the local community, achieve the global targets. SDGs are one. The Aichi biodiversity targets, the climate change targets, Paris climate agreements. So those are our future plans. And the lessons learned so far and what others can take, people from Korea and the international community, from our examples, making appropriate need assessment. Your need assessment has to be solid. If you fail to do proper need assessment, your program is not going to be successful. But with the government, both local and national, I mean, you cannot, we are NGOs, we are CBOs, but the government is responsible. So we work, we pilot, hand it over to the government. Start as a pilot and get it mainstreamed the government program. Cooperation, collaboration, convergence, and healthy competition are the key to success. Constant updating, your objectives, your methodology should always be constantly updated. Monitoring evaluation, we must be doing throughout, externally, internally, using children. The community audit, our programs, how does community find it? Do they really find it beneficial? So community must audit. We must give the power to the community. We ask them, you audit it. Identify and promote. I mean, in the community, there are a lot of people who do successful initiatives. We need to identify them. We need to recognize them. We need to promote them. There are very good change agents, individuals in the community who do brilliant innovation. So we need to identify them. We need to promote them. So identifying successful community initiatives, innovations, and those individuals and promoting them. Traditional knowledge, the local traditional knowledge and management practices are very important. We need to really build upon them. The modern knowledge and the traditional knowledge, a right mix of that, and that will give the clues to sustainable development. Introduce new appropriate technologies and systems in the area. And we have been so far quite successful. And we acknowledge, Dr. Hyun-Sun B, Director, RC Dobungu, introduced us to Busan International Education Forum, and that gave us the opportunity. And the designer who helped me in designing my PPT is Pahi Gangwar. So I acknowledge both of them. My address is here, contact email ID and the mobile number. And I welcome your suggestions, your comments and the questions, if any. You can reach out me on this address. And really, I wish you all success. And I hope this experience sharing will give you some ideas to work with your community in a better way. And we need to really, as I said, a lot of cooperation, collaboration, convergence, and healthy competition. And as a RC community, we have been taking the local community examples with the global community. We have learned a lot from RC Dobungu, RC Tongyong in Korea, RC in Japan, and we have been able to transfer technologies especially the disaster management from Japan and Korea into our systems. One of our colleagues was a Sejatra fellow for 3 months at RC Tongyang. And he visited, he saw entire disaster management systems in Korea. And that really helped us. And we took that to our schools and the community. And with the help of Korea and Japan and other RC network, today we are better prepared in terms of disasters. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.